What's up, guys? I'm EJ, and I'm joined by Kendall. And thank you so much for checking out this edition of Draft Chatter. Today, Kendall, we had two stories. Later on, we'll be talking about the pre-draft workout, the pro day that we saw from Tyrese Maxey and Anthony Edwards. So stay locked in for that. But first, I want to talk about these reports coming out about Lamelo Ball. So, Kendall, there are reports that the top point guard prospect, Lamelo Ball, has not impressed teams in their interviews with him. This was Rick Barnell, the Charlotte Observer. He told a local radio station, quote, "Here's what I'm hearing at large. LaMelo Ball is not performing very well at job interviews. I've heard from from multiple sources he is not improving his perception via the job interview. There are some people drafting later in the top 10 who are not preparing for the possibility of Ball still being around. And I'm not saying that he will not be a top 3 pick. I'm saying that I know for a fact that there are teams later in the top 10 who are doing more research on him because they no longer think that it's a given he will." So, Kendall, there have been some reports out there that Ball has not been so keen on playing with some of the teams that are near the top of the draft. We already know his dad said that he didn't think the Warriors were a great fit.
He doesn't want to play for Charlotte?
We've heard some rumblings, and like I said, LeVar said that he didn't think that the Warriors were a good fit. And though LaMelo did come out with a statement, during I think he was on the road tripping podcast. I think he said that he thought that was not true. He disagreed with that sentiment, but nonetheless, Kendall, is this a big deal? You think that LaMelo is struggling with these sit downs with NBA teams, and what do you think about it? Are you surprised by it?
Well, first I'm going to raise the question: is it true? Because a little bit
Fair
afterwards, we got your word from Jonathan Givony, who came out with a scoop that he's meeting or he met with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and that he's going to start meeting with the Hornets, and Bulls, I believe, as well, and Warriors, all the teams in the top 4. And so I wonder if that was a reaction to that report, because it's like, if he hasn't met with these teams yet, then who are these phantom teams that are interviewing LaMelo Ball, and him flaming these interviews? So that's question number one. But look, maybe it was a combine thing. I know he was at the virtual combine, whatever that was, or whatever that was like. So maybe they're going off of that. Maybe there were some informal interviews that were done, where he didn't impress. I know you raised the theory when the story broke that could it be some teams in the back half of the top 10, Knicks, that maybe want LaMelo Ball, maybe have been reported to like LaMelo Ball, like the Knicks, maybe whose former agent runs the team like the Knicks, who decide we're going to put out some disinformation to kind of spook some teams at the top of the draft. I think that is possible, but the issue with that is that, first of all, I don't like that theory that a team in the back half of the first round. I think it's possible, but I don't get why a team in the back half of the first round of the top 10, or a team in the back half of the lottery, would think that putting out that he had a bad interview with us, even how bad you could say it was the worst interview you've ever had. Why would that stop a team in the top 5 who did interview LaMelo Ball, likely, or is going to interview LaMelo Ball, from drafting? Now, I think Ball's situation is interesting in that there was the perception before this Gavoni report came out. There was the perception that maybe he wasn't going to speak with the Warriors, or he wasn't going to speak with, some of these teams, Cleveland or, Charlotte, and that maybe he was just like, nah, I don't care where I go, or I want to go to the Knicks or something. And so maybe that would be the advantage of, like, if he didn't speak with those teams, then those teams really don't know what to work. No, they don't know what to go off of. But historically, I'm never a fan of the whole, this guy had the worst workout ever for us, because it's like, well, yeah, but he's going to work out with my team. And if he works out with my team and he looks good, then I'm not going to go off of how he looked with this other team. Now, if it's a pattern, if he looks bad in one workout and he looks bad in another, you have to take that into consideration. Or if you haven't worked out the guy yourself and you hear he didn't look good or he didn't interview well, then that's something to take note of. But ultimately, I don't know if this is true, but based off of that. But I'll let you go.
Yeah, I can see this going both ways. I agree. I think that, if you were a team near the top of the draft that has already not spoken to him, why would this deter you from drafting him? I would argue that maybe you would say that, well, if enough word gets out about this guy being toxic, does that maybe turn the fan base, and does that maybe affect, how the perception of people going into the draft and who they want to take? Because, maybe the GM may not care so much about fan reaction, but the owners do. I mean, owners tip their thumb on the scale for in various draft picks for years. So I go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's an old adage when it comes to scouting, whether it be the NBA or the NFL, that you have your board where you have your scouts that make the decisions, or that kind of compile the feelings on the prospects. Then you have the GM who's making the decision and his feeling. Those two could disagree, but at the end of the day, the owner could throw off anything. It's politics is what you like to call it, but honestly, it's the owner that comes in and makes the final decision and could really sway things. If you've ever seen the movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner, then you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So with that being the case, that may be some of the strategy behind it. When I saw this story, I texted it to you. I think that this is the worst case scenario for a player like Lamelo Ball, in terms of if you're trying to be drafted as high as possible. Now, again, maybe that's not what he wants to do, but if that's the case, this is the last thing I want to hear, or any team wants to hear. Or if you're a team that did talk to him, and I know he did talk to the Warriors, he did talk to the Knicks, he admitted that already. Whether those were official interviews or whether this pre-draft stuff, I'm not 100% sure. But, if he really did go to some of these teams and have a first interview and he bombed them, that's terrible news for him. Because I think if there's any detractors about LaMelo, I think very few, or some are about his game and how it translates to this aspect of his game, but a lot of it is upstairs. People know he's very talented. It's how does he apply that talent? Is the talent up here matching the skill set? And does the approach to the game and the maturity match the skill set? And that's really the one of the biggest questions about his game. And when you hear he's not interviewing well, it's like, okay, well, is he shy and he's just having a tough time, or is he not taking it seriously? I mean, I don't know the answer to any of those questions, but this is not the conversation you want to have. I told you, I think he would have been better off if I heard he wasn't working out that well. I would have said, well, I don't really care about the workouts, because he's a guy that's great in games where he's playing with 5 people, where he's playing off other teammates. So if he's a one-on-one, if he doesn't look that great, or 1-on-0, he doesn't look that great, I'm not going to go crazy. But if I'm hearing that he's not, really wowing these teams in these interviews, that does raise an eyebrow for me. I'm not going to go crazy about it. But I think for him, this is not great news that this is getting out.
The last thing I will say is that, look, we watched his interview with Mike Schmitz, and this is the reason why I think that this is believable. Because, look, we watched quite a few. We've watched about 5 or 6 of them. We haven't seen he's come out with a ton. But we saw some of the initial ones. We saw him. We saw Edwards. I think we saw Mannion, R.J. Hampton.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big O.
Yeah, we saw Big O. I saw the Abdia one, the Killian Hayes. And LaMelo Ball, let's be honest, was probably the worst one. And I'm not saying that, I'm not going to draft a guy based off of a media interview, because that's not relevant. But but his demeanor in that interview paired up with, again, the perception of him going into the interview and going into just in general around him, and then you pair it up with this report, none of it lines up well. None of it lines up positively to LaMelo Ball being like a guy you'd want to draft. Like if I would have heard this report about Anthony Edwards, the guy we're about to talk about next, I'd be less inclined to believe it. Just because, we saw that interview where I'm like, wow, that guy had a bad draft interview. The guy who has a ton of energy and a ton of confidence and a ton of humility in his game and, a willingness to get better. And, there were times where LaMelo Ball was delusional about, shot selection, delusional about, decision making and, shooting ability. I mean, stuff where it was concerning. It was certainly concerning. So, again, not to write him off of one interview, but if you're asking me whether or not I believe it based off of the Schmitz interview, I would say so. And I know I'm contradicting myself. Initially, I said I don't believe it because of what Jonathan Givony reported. But what I saw with my own 2 eyes was a guy that wouldn't shock me if he didn't wow teams.
Well, that's why lastly I bring up the point what we talk about this point about, is it something manufactured? Because it's one of those things where the perception, it's just a situation where the perception meets the reality, and it's such a good narrative that someone is using it to their advantage. I mean, LaMelo not doing well in interviews is a narrative that certainly people could believe.
Yeah,
so
teams probably have saw that same interview and probably also
right.
were a little
And look, like I said, I mean, if the people around LaMelo also know his strengths and weaknesses, so could they be the ones spearheading this too because they don't want to go certain places? Maybe because they know the same thing, that perception meets reality, that creates a narrative. So that's the interesting thing with the LaMelo Ball situation. We'll continue to follow that. I still think he's one of the top players in this draft. To me, it's him and Killian Hayes 1 and 1A at point guard. But this was a little bit of a head scratcher to see this come out just so aggressively. And Bonnell wasn't the only one, by the way. Jonathan Macri, our buddy over from Knicks Film School, I mean, he said the same thing, that he was hearing the same thing, that he's reported this like weeks ago, that Melo wasn't so great in interviews. So that word's starting to get out there. I don't know what to make of it, but it can't be great news. Anyway, let's also talk about this unprecedented display we saw from two prospects. So as you said, Georgia's Anthony Edwards and Kentucky's Tyrese Maxey were part of a nationally televised pro day workout hosted by Klutch Sports, which represents both prospects. Kendall, we've never seen this kind of.
That was a Klutch pro day? I thought that was a Lakers workout.
Oh, because of all the Lakers guys out there. Well, man, look, Trae Young was out. Trae Young was out there. Trae Young was out there. So let's not speak anything to existence.
Well, yeah, Trae Young was there. That would have been tampering, but I don't know.
Quavo was in there, so I don't know. They might need a backup point guard.
I saw the team's two best players, and I saw their GM, right? Rich Paul. No, I'm joking.
I thought you were joking about the Klutch Sports questioning because Klutch Sports was literally everywhere on the court in the background. Like, I'm pretty sure the guys were wearing Klutch Sports shirts. Like, it was like, if you would have to have been blind, and I think it wasn't a Klutch Sports event.
That is true.
But what did you make of this spectacle and also the stuff we saw from these two gentlemen?
Yeah, so look, first of all, I'm happy that they were able to do something like this. I mean, this is something that has gotten popular over the last 3 or 4 years, maybe. These agency pro days, where these guys, a lot of times it's guys that maybe won't even work out for NBA teams. They'll just do their own pro days, much like the NFL. And we've seen some guys have explosive performances at these pro days. So I was glad to see these guys in the gym. I thought Maxey played well for the little bit we saw him. He tried to focus a lot on conditioning. In his interview with Mike Schmitz, and I think that certainly showed. And it was interesting was that he focused a lot on conditioning, and he looked in better shape and better condition than Edwards did. Not to say Edwards, physically, I mean, he looked fine for the most part, but he certainly got bigger, and I think there's a lot of that strength. But, you can tell he was winded by the end. Your hands on the knees, kind of couldn't, he got up at the end on that last dunk, but, he certainly was tired. And so shout out to Maxey. Because at first, you hear that, conditioning. I mean, who cares if you can do a workout, a 20-minute workout. But then you see the guy who might be the number one pick in the draft do it, and he's hands on his knees at the end. And it does make Maxey look better.
And look, to me, Kendall, conditioning tells me about your professionalism. So to me, it's super important. Like Maxey showing that he is in that kind of top shape was very impressive to me because we're in a pandemic. We don't have the typical means for working out the way we normally do. And I'm not killing Edwards for that, but the fact that Maxey, like when I texted you for one of the biggest things I thought his conditioning was great. I mean, he was, at the end of the workout hitting 30-foot threes, and we'll talk about his shooting in a second. Like, that tells me, okay, this guy's really taking this seriously. When I hear that he's waking up at 4:30 a.m. to work out, I'm not saying Edwards isn't or other guys aren't, but it showed. It showed in this little. I thought he shot the ball well. I think that Jeez, I'm a shooter. Relax. I thought he shot the ball well. I think that Jay Billis was on the money. Shout out to ESPN for putting it on, and Jay Billis and Mike Schmitz and all the guys that were on the broadcast. I thought he definitely pointed out one of the issues with Maxey's shot is low release that often comes out too horizontal. He's definitely working on that, and you can see it. And I thought that he shot the ball much better. I think he squares his shoulders pretty consistently. So I liked what I saw from his shot. He doesn't strike me just in this workout and just watching his game, he doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to be a knockdown 3-point shooter. But he has to be a guy who can keep the defense honest because we know he can get to the paint and we know he can slash. And did I see a guy who could potentially keep the defense honest with an improving stroke? I did. He still got to work on that. I think he can get his elbow up even higher a little bit and get that release a little bit higher. But the rotation on the ball was good. And I liked, there weren't too many. I don't like shots going left and right, and a lot of the times,
Edwards had a little bit of those.
He did. And one of the things, you'll see, like, not to pick on one player particularly, but, when I watched Marcus Smart shoot at Oklahoma State, he had issues with jumping straight, landing straight, a shoulder square all over the place. Now, to be fair, I didn't see Marcus Smart shoot necessarily in an empty gym as much. I'm talking about in-game. But even in some of the few empty gym shooting we did see, still has some of those issues. And Marcus Smart is a really good shooter now, and he's worked on it. So, but Maxey, none of those issues.
As a Celtics fan, first of all, yes, Marcus Smart he had a lot of issues with the jump shot at Oklahoma State. But it warms my heart to hear you say that Marcus Smart is a very good shooter now.
I mean, he is. I mean, at this point,
sure we'd see that day. But we're here.
Hey man, it is what it is. 2020, right? Anything's possible.
Maxey, you know how I mentioned it with the Vassal draft chatter video, but he is a classic guy where he shot 29% from three in college, but he shot 83% from the free throw line. So this idea that Maxey won't be able to shoot because of look at his college three-point percentage, he's going to shoot probably better than 29% next year in the NBA. He's just going to take better quality shots. He's going to get shots more in rhythm. In Kentucky, he was an awful fit.
Spacing going to be better too.
He's going to be great. I'm not saying John Calipari, because look at Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Tyler Hero and Jamal Murray. Look how great Maxey's going to be. Like you texted me, what about Kevin Knox? Kevin Knox was the first one that came to mind. Because, obviously Knicks fans were just bamboo. Gal was the guy telling the Knicks, you got to draft Kevin Knox. If you draft Kevin Knox, if you don't draft him, you'll regret it for the rest of your franchise's history. And I sort of regretting that pick. But, I do feel like, when you look at the shooting ability and the free throw shooting ability, he's a guy that's always had a lot of range, Maxey. He's always had a lot. Obviously we saw it in that first game against Michigan State. It's just the middle area that he's had a little bit of trouble. That mid-range jump shot, I'm not sure if it's there, but some of that is his form. His form doesn't seem, he shoots a little bit of a line drive. What do you think of Edwards? We haven't talked much about Edwards.
Yeah, Edwards, to me, what honestly struck me is that, like, to me, he seems like a game shooter. Like, Maxey outshot him in this workout. It's not even close. That doesn't bother me. I know Edwards can make threes. I know he has unlimited range. He can shoot. But some guys just don't shoot as great in like that kind of environment. I think he struck me as one of those guys. I like it. I still think his form is better than Maxey's, which is why I'm not freaking out because I like that.
His form reminds me of Tracy McGrady. Am I bugging? Shoots a little bit like T-Mac.
McGrady got more lift. McGrady got a lot of lift, but I see a little bit.
Kind of like really.
To be honest, he kind of reminds me of Kevin Durant and how he shoots it. Like very mechanical and very like tight, but same shot every time.
See KD.
But KD and T-Mac have similar average shots, so I see that. But
right.
T-Mac just get up really high on his jump shot. But no, I thought Edwards looked good. His athleticism jumps off the screen. It's funny. You can see, and I'm not saying Maxey's a great athlete, but you see him compared to like another like good NBA athlete, and then you put Edwards on the floor, and you're like, oh my god, this guy! Like some of these dunks he's doing, the way he's just lifting up, it looks with ease. For a guy that's that built, sometimes it just doesn't look like he should be able to jump like that. The guy with his build, I don't expect to have a 40-inch kind of vertical, but the way he gets up, I thought his handle was tight.
Yeah, he's built like Mark Smart, but he jumps like Victor Oladipo.
Exactly. It's guys that normally built that top heavy. I'm not used to just seeing fly the way he does. Looking so effortlessly. That's what was very impressive.
I'm glad Jay Billis was, because I've been high on Edwards and the fact that I think he's the best player in the draft, and I think Billis sees it as well. He's the most talented guy. And that's been the narrative around Lamelo Ball, and there's been a narrative out there recently on Edwards that teams don't really want him. He started to drop. A lot of people picking a lot of holes in his game, and I wonder if that is a little bit of disinformation.
Gamesmanship,
a lot of gamesmanship there.
Will somebody sell me the farm to get this guy?
Like Ben Simmons. We heard that about Ben Simmons. All the guy who, and I'm not saying Edwards was as far away the number one pick as Ben Simmons was, but when in his pre-draft process, we heard a lot of weaknesses being pointed out about Ben Simmons. When at the end of the day, we all knew he was the best prospect in that draft. Edwards to me feels similar, where I'm like, are we really debating about? Yeah, shot selection is not great. And he has issues. Obviously, his feel for the game, is comes and goes, and decision making is poor, and defensive effort isn't always there. But we're talking about Lamelo Ball as the number one pick, and we're not talking about he has pretty much all the same issues, and not the same athletic profile. So I don't know. Lamelo Ball is a much better passer, much more instinctual, obviously, but. He has issues that Anthony Edwards has as well. So, I feel like they haven't called it straight in this draft process when it comes to Anthony Edwards. But what I will say is, speaking of not calling it straight, the last draft chatter video we did about Anthony Edwards looking incredible in that Warriors workout, smokescreen. Because, we saw him work out. And look, he looked fine. He looked like Anthony Edwards, not a knock, but there's no way that in like the span of a week he went from having the greatest workout ever to looking ordinary.
So you calling cap on
wind and looking tired and missing threes left and right. I mean, again, he wasn't terrible. He was what Anthony Edwards what I would expect, but yeah, I'm calling cap. I think the biggest winner of this draft was Rich Paul, or this pro day was Rich Paul.
Oh, 100%. The biggest winner was Rich Paul.
NBA players, it was like Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week. All the NBA players sitting courtside. I mean, I thought it was the All-Star game. I was waiting for Kevin Hart.
Yeah, Quavo was there.
The Glacier Boy showed up.
I mean, look, man, like you gotta give it to Rich Paul. I mean, that's brilliant marketing. That's brilliant. I mean, the fact that he got ESPN. Part of me looked at it, I was like, is this really a good look for ESPN? I kind of low-key wasn't crazy about that aspect of it, because, at the end of the day, they got to cover, Klutch Sports athletes in an impartial way. And,
this isn't like the NFL where it's like, oh, we're doing Oregon Pro Day.
Right, and this isn't a college. Right, exactly. Yeah. It's a little different than that. Rich Paul is giving them stories, and Klutch Sports is facilitating stories.
Did you notice at the end, this is the last thing I want to bring up, but did you notice at the end, Anthony Edwards about to do his ESPN interview, and Rich Paul walks up to him, and then Edwards tells him, "Yo, we're live. You got to get out of here." And Rich Paul walks away. And I think what's going to happen, but I think Rich Paul is going to stop him before the interview and tell him what to say. Like, these are the points you got.
No, so here's what I think happened. No, I think you missed it, because I thought this was very fascinating.
When he found out it was live, he's like, "Damn, I missed it."
Okay, so because I was very fascinated by this, because I was watching it very closely. Because I heard before they even went to Schmitz and Edwards, I heard someone say, "Yo, they're too loud," and I was like, "Who said that?" But I didn't know who it was. Then I saw them there, and I saw him motion to Rich, and Rich came over, and then I think he was like, "Yo, we're gonna be live," but I think he wanted them to get the other guys to quiet down because he thought they were too loud. And I think that was what he was trying to do.
So you couldn't hear Schmidt.
Part of me was like, part of me though was like, I don't think Rich Paul even did anything to stop the guys talking in the background. I was like, he's not. Rich Paul's like to tell LeBron to shut up. Like, what are you talking about, rookie? Yeah. But yeah, that's what I think happened.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think Rich Paul knew what was going on, and then he just got a random call. He's like, "What's going on?" And at the end, we're going live now, so go away.
Right.
And he's like, "But they gotta be quiet," and then he didn't even do anything. He's like, "Oh," and he just walked away.
It's not
anyway, that was my like super engaged, perception of what happened there.
Not as conspiratorial as mine, but probably more realistic and probably what actually happened.
Look,
unfortunately, I was hoping for the outcome of Rich Paul was trying to control the whole narrative of everything, but
we gotta give Rich Paul some. I gotta shoot him some bail here.
Look, yeah, exactly. Hopefully, ESPN does more of these, but this was certainly cool.
Yeah, this was cool. I mean, look, I think that they should do more of these. I mean, look, there was a terrible Thursday night football game on that had I had no interest in watching, so it had nothing to do. It's good to put it on there. Here's some draft content, some really smart draft content, by the way. I mean, again, you got Jay Billis and Mike Schmitz. That was great. So great job at ESPN. Great job all around. Fun stuff. What do you guys think of the pro day workouts? Were you impressed by Maxey? Were you impressed by Edwards? Were you disappointed by either guy? What did you think of the spectacle? And what do you think about this Ball situation? Are you a believer that you think maybe there's some issues with his interviews and how he's approaching them? Leave a comment in the comment section. Make sure you like this video. And, of course, check out all of our content here on New Generation Media. That'll do it for now. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.